it is a pretty impressive model and certainly very much looks the part. And I particularly like the subtle detail differences between the early and later locomotives. A big hello to you. Hope I find you well. I'm Jenny Kirk. Welcome you up here to Weir Yard. And in today's video, we're going to be taking a long, hard look at the all-new A5 locomotives from Sonic Models, which come exclusively via Rails of Sheffield. And I've been following this project with a great deal of excitement because I really do like the Great Central Railway locomotives. And certainly when I saw that they were offering one of these in that livery, I really couldn't help myself. So I've just recently paid for my two and had them delivered, although because I had flu, this review has had to wait for 2 weeks to be filmed, so a little bit behind the curve, but never mind on that. But do they really live up to my expectations? Well, let's take a look today, and don't forget to tickle the like button and share this video too, and if you haven't already done so, do please subscribe to the channel. And we'll be taking a good close look in association with Trainomatic, makers of DCC decoders and accessories that are designed by enthusiasts for enthusiasts. Find the full range available to order now at tramfabrique.co.uk. Additional support comes from Rocar Prototype Models, where detail, accuracy and value for money go hand in hand. With their debut model of SafePack auto racks wowing model railroaders alike, now is your chance to order these in road names and configurations to accurately reproduce auto rack workings from 1974 to the present day on your model railroad. Order today from rocarmodels.com and see the full range for yourself. So come with me and let's see if these Pacific tank locomotives are really going to make the grade. Of this year's releases, the one which I've been looking forward to more than most is the Robinson A5 that's come from Sonic Models in association with Rails of Sheffield. And I'm not entirely sure why, but I think it's got a lot to do with that pretty Great Central Railway livery that is offered as one of the livery options. Now, as soon as I heard that they were in stock, I made a beeline to pay for my two examples that I ordered. And I'm going to show you these today, show you exactly which ones tickled my fancy. I've got S4101-07, and this is in the BR Early Emblem Black as number 69804. The model is also available in Late Emblem Black and also a very early BR Black, which just has British Railways written on the tank sides. There are a number available in LNER liveries, but for me the standout is this one, S4101-01, and this is in original Great Central Railway green as number 373. And this, for me, is a beautiful livery. Now on the side of the box there is a potted history on these, built primarily from a 1911 at Gorton Works for the suburban traffic being run out of Marylebone Station. They were very successful. A second batch was built in the early LNER period. They were then later classed as A5/2, whereas these were the A5/1s. And it's the A5/1 that Sonic Models have produced. Now, they were quite far-flung in later years, getting to Lincolnshire. Darlington Shed as well had some, and were pretty well regarded by the crews that operated them. And they lasted quite late, through till 1960 for the A51s, with the A52s, although later built, lasted only until 1958, and none were preserved. And it has to be said that the Pacific tanks are probably the unloved cousin in some respect of their tender counterparts, because whereas the A1, A2, A3 and A4 have all been produced in model form and been very popular models, the various Pacific tanks, certainly on the LNER system, we had from A5 through to I think it was A8, all of those have kind of fallen by the wayside with none preserved, which is a great shame. But as you can see from this livery, it really is quite an attractive locomotive. Included in the detail packet, we've got the brake rigging and also some detailing parts, things like fire irons and a shovel there. And we've also got some lamps too, and a degree of buffer beam brake detailing. The locomotive itself in the Great Central Railway livery doesn't have those lamps attached, although I do know some of the other liveries do come with them factory fitted. Now, one of the things which has been talked about online with this is some people have reported a little bit of a bow on the running plate. So I've got my metal steel rule, and it's there's a little bit of a bow up at the front. Again, a little bit of a bow up at the back, but it's not a huge amount. And certainly, let's just check the other side. This was probably the area which I really wanted to check. Again, a little bit of a bow at the front and at the back, but not unsurmountable. And I offer that up as found out of the box what mine looks like. The first impressions of this livery are very, very good. As you can see there, we've got the Great Central Railway crest, has been really nicely produced on the side there. The running plate, we've got this almost like a wine maroon colour. That really does look good, and the finish on this is actually superb. It's number 373, and I really do expect that this is probably going to be one of the more popular liveries, although BR Late Crest does seem to be surprisingly popular too. Now, looking to the front face of the locomotive is captured really, really well. They really do seem to stand quite tall. Of course, the Great Central Railway loading gauge did allow for an awful lot of additional room, be it that it was built more to the burn loading gauge with a view to ultimately being that link through to the channel, which at the time never happened, but it did mean that the Great Central Railway locomotives were afforded that little bit more of a dynamic envelope. The wheels there do seem to have a degree of movement, and I'm just looking at possibly something that will aid current collection, because it will mean that it will straddle floors in the track quite well, though it does seem to be quite a lot of lateral movement on those wheels. The lining on the wheels themselves is really crisp and sharp, and those circles are fully concentric, so we don't seem to have any potential for wobble on those. The wheel arrangement on this locomotive is quite a short wheelbase for those 6 driving wheels, and then we've got a radial style axle on the rear there. You can see it's got a good deal of lateral movement. It's a tried and tested method that does seem to work, and the front bogie is centre sprung, although not a huge amount of spring on that. It's quite a powerful spring. It'd be interesting to see just how well this sits on the track. Again, not a huge amount of movement to soak up any lateral movement in the track, but looks to be enough to not impede any of the running on this locomotive. Underneath, the brake rigging is for the user to fit, but we do have all these springs factory fitted and the sanding pipes too, and certainly a great deal of detail with all of the necessary parts such as the bogies picked out in the correct colour to really make a great rendition of this livery. The cabs themselves are incredibly roomy, and you can just make out there, if we turn this into the light, that we have got full backhead detail. There's quite a lot going on in there, and all of the detail seems to be present and correct. Now we've got these side doors in place, so I'm just going to give that a push. No, it's not sprung loaded. I didn't know whether it would be or not. And then looking to the back, we've got this incredibly characteristic bunker design, very distinctive to this class. You can see there from the rear this strange humped shape with the cab peering out over the top is captured well. The bunker being slightly wider than the cab itself, as is the tanks on the locomotive, again making the fullest use of the loading gauge. The bunker does come with a plastic moulded representation of a humped coal load, Although one area where it has to be said I'm not entirely convinced by, these straves that were a feature of this to keep that coal from falling out do look like they're just placed over the top rather than with the coal pushed hard up against them. And this may be an area that the seasoned modeller would like to remove the plastic insert and then refill with crushed real coal to get a slightly more pleasing effect, although it isn't a bad representation, and certainly it does capture a large look and feel of the real locomotives. Cab glazing is flush glazed, and just looking on the inside there is a bar of glazing that I can see in there, but it's not too obvious, and the interior of the cab does have the sort of cream finish, it looks like, up at the top half, with a dark looking base at the bottom, which doesn't appear to have any moulded detail, with just the insets where the driving wheels would go up into to impinge just into the very bottom of the cab. Handrails, factory fitted. These look to be quite a springy plastic, they're not metal. They are finished in a silvery colour, and as we look across the other side of this locomotive again, we've got some quite sharp details. The white serif on the Great Central looks to be quite bright and sharp and almost drowning out the red. But we've got a really neat representation of the crest in the centre there. Looking further up, the lining on the boiler is quite crisp, and we've got the representation of this chimney really nicely well done. There is no gap around that. Certainly it's something we've seen on other releases where the chimneys don't quite look like they're pushed in all the way from the factory, but no problems with that here. The characteristic dome is exactly as it should be. We've got the safety valves. These look to be plastic moulding, but pretty robust, and a turned metal, I think, whistle on the roof. Again, very robust, no sign of that taking any knocks, and metal handrails fitted throughout. Lining on the buffer beam looks good. These buffers too got almost a mirror finish on there, which is quite an interesting touch. Although the spring-loaded aspect of them, they are sprung, but it feels somewhat loose, and I wouldn't want to be putting these to use as actual sprung-loaded buffers. We've also got that characteristic closing wheel on the front of the smokebox door, and everything else is there as it should be. Couplings come factory fitted, slimline tension locks in NEM pockets, front and back, and all in all, that's a pretty pleasing locomotive. Bringing in the BR version, this has a number of little detail differences which were applied to the class through their lifetime. First up, one of the more noticeable on this is that it has got factory fitted lamps, whereas the Great Central version had those in the detail pack for the end user to fit. The biggest detail difference are these cab side windows, and these look almost like a Great Eastern Railway design, where we look there and just see them in the cab side, and certainly makes the cab a little bit more weather resistant compared to the huge open sides that the Great Central Railway crews had to put up with. Again, we've got these straves over the top of the plastic insert, and it's an area where the addition of some fine coal dust would go a long way to just slightly make that look like the straves are pressed hard against the coal load. We've got this rear lamp fitted with the red shown to rear. It's a really nice touch actually, and certainly it would be nice as things go on in the future to see whether these can be made to be working. Looking to the front, we've got some really quite sharp works plates on there. The lining on this with the dual red bands, really sharp and crisp. The only area where it looks a little bit off is that British Railways emblem. Looks almost like it's faded, and again, it's something that touched upon with the Great Central Railway version, that it's almost like the white is slightly overpowering the other colours. But certainly it's not unusual to have seen locomotives with slightly more faded transfers later in life, and I'm not overly bothered by that. The rest of the number application does seem nice and crisp, and the lining does appear to be just as it should be, although it looks to be missing a tiny bit of the red there, but really I'm only noticing that under the very close magnification. There's no lining on the wheels on this, although on this rear wheel we do have some damage to the wheel face, which, whilst it's not a huge amount, it is something that I'm going to point out. Let's just have a look on the other side. Again, a few small scratches and a bit of a nick on the side of that wheel, which is a little bit of a shame. The rest of the running gear is pretty pleasing. And let's just check the running plate itself on this. So I've got my steel rule, and again we've got a slight bowing up on the front. I think it's slightly more pronounced on this one, so there is a bit of a variation. Let's just check the other side. And again, just a little bit of a bow on there. Unfortunately, that does seem to be something that I have seen reported about online, and it is mimicked to some degree with the models that I've got here. The BR Black version has the whistle correctly moved down onto the top of the firebox, and gone is the little bit of a shroud at the base of the safety valve. So you can see that there really are some quite nice detail differences that have been correctly modelled to show the locomotives throughout their lifespan. When it came to running these locomotives on DC, what I did find is that it did have a little bit of a shuffle on the DCC Concepts rolling road. And whilst initially it did seem to be a little bit sluggish to respond, it does recommend in the instructions to run these locomotives in both directions for a length of time. And I did find that this very quickly did improve the running characteristics of the locomotive. So it's always best to follow those instructions. When it comes to DCC fitting, these locomotives come with a Next 18 decoder socket, and that means that you're going to need a Next 18 decoder, and I've chosen to fit these with a DCC Concepts Zen Blue Plus Next 18 decoder, because these are the only ones that I was able to get hold of at the moment due to ongoing issues with processor supply. So certainly as long as you get a Next 18 decoder, then you're fine with being able to fit that. The Next 18 decoder has quite a simple interface, and you can see there they're quite a nice small form factor. There is a sound fitted option available from Rails of Sheffield for this, and it should be noted that the locomotive is factory fitted with a speaker sitting just underneath the decoder socket. To get into the locomotive, there's just 3 screws that need undoing. Handily, the one main screw is this silver one, so ignore the black ones and just undo the silvery coloured screw. And then you need to undo these 2 outboard screws just behind the front bogie. Then it's simply a case of grabbing hold of the tanks and the wheels and just rock the chassis free. At this point, it's really quite easy to see just how much weight there is in this locomotive. With die-cast tanks and running plates, certainly this has a lot of adhesive weight, and this body on its own does feel incredibly heavy. Putting that to one side, we can have a look at the mechanics of this model. And I do like this sort of Spartan utilitarian neatness that Sonic Models have put into this design. You can see here that the motor actually fits in the smoke box of the model, with a flywheel and a drive across to a gear tower that drives the centre of the 6 driving wheels. On the rear, hidden in the bunker of the model, is where you'll find underneath that speaker, factory fitted, and on top we've got that Next 18 decoder socket. Just pull off the blanking plate and then very carefully replace that with the Next 18 decoder. Just make sure that the decoder is sitting flush, and in the case of this decoder it does have some wires for a stay alive. You can either trim these off, or there is plenty of space to just neatly fit these in above the decoder and they will fit back neatly into the space that's left inside the tender. And that's all you need to do for DCC fitting. Then it's just simply a case of reassembling the locomotive. Whilst I've got this apart, it's nice to see the design of the bottom of the boiler there, and the finish on that is just as good as the rest of the body. You can also see the rivet detail around the front bogies, and the guard irons. They're really quite robust there at the back, and a nice authentic touch. One thing I did find when running in the BR Black example is that the drive did seem to be a little bit on the dry side. So I've chosen to preemptively add a very, very small amount of suitable lubricant, and I found that this did improve matters just during that running in process. Fitting the chassis back into the locomotive, first up we need to make sure that any wires from the decoder go into the bunker without jamming on anything. Gently slide this all back down into place. Again, another quick look, make sure everything is as it should be. And you may also wish to just double check that these sandpipes haven't become jammed underneath the wheels. So everything's down and in place, simply a case of putting the screws back in. And there, your locomotive is very, very easily DCC fitted. Out of the box, your DCC decoder will be set to ID number 3, and it's really, really simple to change this to whatever suits you for your numbering system. I'm just going to use the number 373 on this model. It just seems a convenient number that fits within the parameters of the DCC decoders. When it came to running on the layout, they were a little bit of an intermittent performer, it must be said, and this appears to be entirely down to the very short wheelbase of the 6 driving wheels, which is where it picks up from wipers behind. Now, I did try adjusting these, but it didn't seem to make a great deal of difference, and I do believe that these models would be much improved for having pickups in the bogies and pony truck, and it's certainly something which I would urge Sonic models to consider for subsequent production runs of these, because it does seem like it is a great model let down by very poor pickups. There is, however, plenty of room in the bunker, and my 2 examples will most undoubtedly get fitted with stay-alives to help with the performance, but it was just a little bit irritating to have some jerky stop and starts on the layout. Other than that, they held the track pretty well and were able to pull some quite good loads, so all other aspects of performance were pretty acceptable. Now that turns us to the scores. First up is build quality, and actually these are a very substantial weighted model with plenty of die-cast metal to provide good quality feel to all aspects of the model. There really wasn't anything where I had concerns out of the box in terms of the quality of workmanship of putting it together, or indeed the reliability of the mechanical parts. All in all, it is a pretty impressive model and certainly very much looks the part, and I'm giving this a 9.8. On running quality though, it was a different story, and I put this down entirely to having wiper pickups only on that relatively short 6-wheel driving wheel wheelbase, and it does seem to be a missed opportunity not having additional pickups in the bogie and pickup truck, because this would have gone a very long way to alleviate this issue. Try as I might, taking the keeper plate off and adjusting those wipers, which in and of itself was actually quite a tricky task due to the nature of the way that the keeper plate appears to be being held by some hidden wires, I wasn't able to improve the performance, but there is ample room in the tender for a stay alive. But it did feel that this might be a little bit of a retrograde step that should have been picked up during the testing process for the EP of the model. I had similar difficulties with both of the models, which leads me to believe that this is something that may be much more widespread across all of the different releases. So I'm going to give this reluctantly a 6.6. On DCC Fitting and Innovation, it really was quite easy to DCC fit these models. With 3 screws to take out, the entire chassis just drops clear, giving great access to all elements of the transmission, motor and circuit board. And with the speaker being pre-fitted, it means that sound fitting these really couldn't be simpler, and it does seem to leave plenty of space for a stay alive, which, given the performance of those wiper pickups, may well be something that you might want to consider. But overall, I was quite happy with this aspect, and I'm giving this a 9.2. On accuracy and quality of finish, they really have captured the look and feel of the Robinson 9N, later A5 locomotive, and matching the models up with the photographs that are readily available online, I felt that they really had made a really great fist of the model, and I particularly like the subtle detail differences between the early and later locomotives, which really shows that they've put a great deal of thought into being able to capture the full spread of these locomotives' lifespan. So I'm going to give these a 9.1. With a price point of £149 for the DCC Ready example, I thought that actually you're getting quite a lot of locomotive for your money. A great deal has been made of late about die-cast locomotives attracting a premium, but this locomotive has a great deal of die-cast metal within it, and it doesn't appear to have resulted in a premium price being charged. It's robust, and it really does feel a substantial quality model, and at £149, that's actually at the lower end of the market for what you might expect for a locomotive of this type, so I'm going to give this a 9.1. And that gives us a final score of 43.8, which is still pretty respectable, but certainly there is an area for improvement with the pickups on this locomotive, and I do hope that this is an area that Sonic Models might look to address in the next production run of these. Well, I really hope that you enjoyed today's video and found it informative, and I'd really love to hear from you what you think about these Robinson A5 locomotives that have been released as the first 00 gauge locomotive model from Sonic Models. And certainly, outwardly at least, I thought that they really do look the part. They've got a really high quality, heavy die-cast feel to them, and certainly feel that every inch to be a great representation of this long-lost class of locomotives. The only area where I felt that they were let down was on those pickups, and as I said in the video, I did try and adjust them, and no amount of adjustment really seemed to make these reliable runners, which was a great shame because it was the only aspect that really let down this model for me. But don't take that as being me slating this model. I think that they do still have a great deal of potential, and I'm really quite happy with the 2 that I bought. And I've already got on order some stay alives, and hopefully that will go a long way to address the issues, and there is the space inside them to very easily fit a stay alive, which should actually remove some of these little stutters that it gets on the track. And my thoughts are that I do hope that Sonic Models just adjust these in future runs. Maybe have some pickups fitted to the front bogie would really help a great deal. And we have seen bogies with pickups on in other models from other manufacturers. So it's not really a great deal of difficulty to do that. And I think it would transform this model's performance. But please leave your comments down below. Are these something that you've ordered? Maybe you've had problems, or maybe you've got a perfect example. I'd really love to hear from your own experiences, and also which livery options you really thought were the ones that you needed to have in your collection. Certainly we've got LNER Green, LNER Black, a whole host of different BR liveries, and my favourite, that great Central Railway liveried version 2. And also don't forget that you can head on over to Patreon and help support the channel to keep making the videos that you want to see. And we've got a whole number of different tiers of rewards to suit anybody who wants to do that. And do please check out all of our merchandise in the store down below. But until next time, this is me, Kirk, saying like, share, subscribe, and happy modelling. Bye for now. Today's video comes in association with Trainomatic, makers of DCC decoders and accessories that are designed by enthusiasts for enthusiasts. Find the full range available to order now at tramfabrique.co.uk. Additional support comes from Rocar Prototype Models, where detail, accuracy and value for money go hand in hand. With their debut model of SafePack auto racks wowing model railroaders alike, now is your chance to order these in road names and configurations to accurately reproduce auto rack workings from 1974 to the present day on your model railroad. Order today from rocarmodels.com and see the full range for yourself. I'd like to send out a huge thanks to everybody who supports me on Patreon, and an extra special huge thanks goes out to Anthony Kidson, Offshore Allen, Michael Lockie, Helen Sink, Gary Lewis, David Quinn, Sparky107107, George Botterini, Chris Moss, Robert Steers, Sam Yates, Dale Williams, John N. from NC, NYMRish, Jonathan Foster, Peter, Clifford Ison, Larry W. Grant, NI Railways 4000 class, Ian Coulson, Alan Dickerson, Eddie Popper, Karen Nichol, Medwin Williams, Crossways Point Junction, 3B Rail, Jennifer Horton, Trains with Nick, and Simon Snow. Thank you. Without you guys, I couldn't do this.